On November 15th, 1966, there was two young couples who told police they had seen a large, white creature whose eyes glowed red, standing at the side of the road near the TNT area in an old, former World War II munitions plant. One of the witnesses described the entity as a slender, muscular man about 7 feet tall with white wings. She could not discern his face due to a hypnotic influence. When they became more and more frightened, they drove off and told the authorities that the man flew after them, screeching. The next few days, more and more sightings happened. This is, of course, the beginnings of the Mothman. However, there was another event, somewhat similar to the Mothman, without the wings and flying and screeching, but another ominous tall man who encountered a civilian on the side of a highway, who bore a strange, large grin. This man is known as Indrid Cold, and his purpose here remains elusive. There are only a couple of incidents of the Smiling Man's origins, but 3 sets of witnesses claim to have seen him. The first happened on November 2nd, 1966, when a salesman by the name of Woodrow Derenberger was driving home to Mineral Wells, West Virginia, from Ohio. At around 7:25 p.m. on a dark and rainy night, Woodrow spotted a strange dark gray craft about 30 to 35 feet long, hovering inches above the ground up ahead at an upcoming intersection. The craft proceeded down the road and past him when it suddenly swerved around and went in front of his car, blocking his path. Woodrow stopped his car. The craft had no windows or lights on it. It was a dark charcoal color, and it glistened when the light hit it. Soon after the craft landed, a figure emerged. The figure looked to Woodrow as a normal-looking human male around 6 feet tall, who had dark hair slicked back. He was deeply tanned and looked about 35 to 40 years old. He wore a blue zippered overcoat made of a shiny reflective material, with a dark blue button shirt underneath, and navy-colored pants. As the man approached Woodrow's car, Woodrow said this man began talking to him, telepathically. "He told me to roll down the window," he said. "He actually told me to roll down the window on the right-hand side of the truck." It was as he approached that Woodrow noticed the large grin from ear to ear on the man's face. It seemed unnerving and odd. The man would later reveal to Woodrow that his name was Indrid Cold, and told him not to be afraid, that we don't mean any harm. The meaning of "we" was not revealed to Woodrow, but the two carried on a telepathic discussion for 5 to 10 minutes. The topic of such discussion seemed benign and uneventful, and an odd juxtaposition to the strange and otherworldliness of the sighting. Indrid, it seemed, wanted to know where the lights were coming from, in the distance, and Woodrow told him that those were the lights in Parkersburg. Indrid asked curiously if this is where all the people lived. Woodrow explained that this was a city and some people lived there, but there are many cities and towns where people lived. Indrid said what we call cities where he is from is called a gathering. Woodrow claimed Cold said he was from a planet called Lanulos in the galaxy of Ganymede. And after this, Indrid told Woodrow that he would communicate with him in the future, and the man then turned around and returned to his ship, and the ship left the area. The second sighting occurred at Point Pleasant, West Virginia, around the same time as Woodrow's sighting. The Lilly family had been reporting poltergeist activity in their home, as well as seeing diamond-shaped lights in the skies above their house at night. One night, their daughter Linda woke from bed to a man standing over her. She described him as a big man, very broad. Couldn't see his face very well, but could see that the man was grinning at her. The man walked around her bed and stood right over top of her. She then screamed and hid under the covers. It's when she peered out from the covers that she saw the man had vanished. A third sighting actually occurred in the same time in the same month of that year. An elderly man said he and a co-worker were driving home one night to Point Pleasant from their job site in Ohio. When they got near Parkersburg on Interstate 77, an elongated object appeared in the sky and came down directly in front of them, forcing them to stop their car. Soon a man emerged, like before, from the craft. The driver rolled down his window in disbelief and the man approached them. This time the man was wearing a dark black jacket and kept a large smile on his face with his arms crossed. The stranger asked who they were and where they were from and where they were going, and what time it was. When they answered them, the man turned and went back to his craft, and it lifted off and went off into the sky. After 1966, there was no more reported sightings. 2003, when an object that matched Woodrow's description of Cold's ship was seen hovering over the treetops, approximately 200 feet. The witnesses stepped out of his car to look at the low, red full moon. He said he saw a rectangular-shaped object hovering in the sky with 3 lights directly in front of it. As they watched, the object made a few maneuvers over the property as though they were looking and scanning for something. Then the object took off into the distance. However, this time there was no encounter with a smiling man and was just an object in the sky that was reported, similar to Cold's ship. The questions arise from the timing of the first 3 encounters, that Indrid Cold is the same entity that was the Mothman. However, the main difference is that the Mothman didn't have a spaceship, and it seemed more of a cryptid, a humanoid with glowing red eyes and wings, and could fly and screech and torment people. Indrid Cold looked and dressed like a normal human male, and came out of a supposed spaceship and had an unnatural grin and talked with his mind in one case, and seemingly talked like a normal man in another. Because of the third encounter and the black jacket, people jumped to a conclusion that Cold may be a man in black, or that the we he referred to meant the Men in Black organization, or agency. The Men in Black are said to be tall men, often pale looking, or strange features like missing eyebrows or a nose, etc., and can talk with their minds and intimidate without words. Beings in black suits that show up to people who've witnessed UFO encounters to convince the people not to talk about their experience. And it does seem like this could be a man in black, stopping people randomly and asking them some questions when a seemingly alien or paranormal experience is going on around town with the Mothman. But the key difference here is that the Men in Black usually target direct individuals that have witnessed something, not stopping people on the highway and asking them random questions to determine if maybe they saw something. Interesting, the Lilly family links the closest to be a motive of the Men in Black, intimidating their daughter after they revealed they have been seeing lights in the sky and observing poltergeist activity in their house. But standing over a girl's bed doesn't seem like their MO either. And this brings us to an interesting point. Woodrow wrote a book, so since he decided to profit off this story, one can assume at the very least he decided to embellish some of these details once they became an urban myth and part of the UFO lore. Profit in book writing tends to lead people to assume you're in it for the money and fame, and could very well be. At least to some degree. But you do have to start taking that first encounter with a bit of grain of salt. The Lilly family could, of course, be completely unrelated, and the daughter could be experiencing some form of sleep paralysis or shadow person entity and other entities in their house. You can see my video on the Hat Man and shadow people. The other story about the two workers seeing a ship in Cold is a bit harder to write off, as they haven't continued to sell their story. But they very well could have been tired, embellishing for many different reasons, or simply mistaken a car for a ship and just saw a smiling cop or Fed that asked them a few questions, and then went about their business. UFO cases are hard for me to give any sense of what may or may not be going on, and it is because it has been so thoroughly obscured by counterintelligence psyops campaigns. So much so that it's now impossible not to lead you to suspect that yes, this too is a psyops. And the frustrating part is that aliens was the kind of thing I really wanted to believe in for so long, because I believe yes, there is life out there on other planets, and I believe there is technology that can bring them here. But these stories and types of stories, you just can't be sure if it's a legitimate incident, or some sort of disinformation campaign, either by greed and lust for fame and money, or by shadow governments creating psyops to cover up their clandestine projects. And the sad part is, that's exactly what a shadowy government agency would want with this topic. For us all to either mock and scoff or assume this story is fake because of psyops. And in these cases, I can't say they're true because it's believed in. I can't say that these have a life and that they are real in a certain sense, because there's debate whether it's a complete fabrication or there is some sense of truth in there somewhere. And most likely in these cases, the initial sightings and incidents are true in some perspective, but they aren't given the proper attention, and people who experience them don't have the ability to contextualize these experiences. Imagination can often alter perceptions and memories, but it can also work the opposite, and certain things can be suppressed by the consciousness and mind. So it's always going to be extremely difficult to narrow down to the reductionist materialist worldview that permeates our reality right now. What would be sad is if these stories were true, and there was a smiling man named Indrid Cold, and all we can do is wonder if a story is told for entertainment or to continue to discredit anyone talking about UFOs. Because honestly, that's the real interesting story, and one I don't think we'll get to tell in the near future. Okay, so now it's time for you to tell me what you think. Was Indrid Cold real, fake, a man in black? Let me know in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps out a small channel like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you next time.